Hi dear CorelDRAW friends, my name is Mo. I'm a graphics designer and illustrator at my own company eConceptum. And in this video tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can create your own textures in Corel PHOTO PAINT and how to use them in a complex project, in this example, in creating a landscape from scratch. I'm using Corel PHOTO PAINT X6 for this task, but I think you can use versions prior to X6 as well. I think back to X4 it should work. And yeah, let's get started. At first we have to create a folder structure for our project. I already did that, as you can see here. It's named Corel PHOTO PAINT Landscape. And in this folder I have some directories to save my files. The folder raw files is for my Corel PHOTO PAINT files, and 3 additional folders for my exported maps. So let's get started with the first file. The first and most important file is the bump map file, which I will use for the color maps and displace maps as well. So I'm creating a new Corel PHOTO PAINT image, and I will rename that one to bump CPT. The width and the height, in this tutorial I'm choosing 500 pixels, but I strongly recommend if you're creating high quality texture maps, you should use at least 2000 pixels in square. For this screen capture I will use 500 pixels, and I think that will work. The resolution is set to 72 pixels DPI. 72 dpi, sorry. I don't have to change that actually, since I'm working on the screen and the output will be on screen. I don't have to change that. As well as the color mode. I will leave that at 24-bit RGB, and that'll be fine. The background color could be white. You can choose any other color if you want, but for this purpose, white is just fine. So once this image is created, I have to set up my paint and my paper color. The paint color should be black. It's used as foreground color, and the background color, or the canvas color, should be white. And what I'm doing first is selecting, okay, double clicking on the fill tool will open up the fill dialog. I need the interactive fill tool, which you can access by hitting the G button on your keyboard. And with the interactive fill tool, I need the linear fountain fill type. The fill style should be from paint to paper, so from black to white, and by default the merge mode is set to normal, but in this case I need difference as merge mode. Once I have that set up in the property bar up here, I'm going to drag my fountain fill in random directions, and after each drag I'm hitting the enter key on my keyboard. And as you can see, this will blend my fountain fills together. This results in a kind of wrinkled, folded texture. And actually I use this method a lot with crumbled paper textures, or something like crumbled, folded silk cloth, and something like that. As you can see, the more I drag in random directions, the more unique this texture gets, and I think this is just fine for this tutorial. But to use this texture, since it's very edgy and has some sharp corners, we have to apply a Gaussian blur that will soften our texture. So let me go to effects, and I'm going to blur, Gaussian blur, and I think 5 pixels are just fine. But I also want to have some more detail in my bump texture, and for this reason I'm going to create a new object layer, and I will fill this object layer with cloudy textures. So I'm selecting the fill tool. It has the shortcut F on your keyboard, and with the fill tool selected, I double click on this little icon down below here, which will open up the fill selection dialog, and I'm clicking on the texture fill icon and go to edit. And as you can see, there's already my cloudy texture which I want to use. The only thing I have to do is replacing the blue color of the sky with a black color, since I want to have it in grayscale only. And then I'm applying this texture fill to my object layer. And now I'm going to blend this object layer into my background with the object merge mode. In this case I use the overlay mode, which will preserve my light and dark values. I could also use the multiply mode or the add mode, but this would darken my image in multiply mode, or lighten my image too much in the add mode. So back to the overlay mode, and I think it's just quite too dark in this area, so I'm just dragging down the opacity, something around 50%, but since it's still too dark, I'm just going to do that manually. So I'm going to the paint tool, which has the shortcut P, and I'm selecting the art brush, and to make adjustments to the brush nib, I need to open the brush settings docker. I'm going to Window, Dockers, Brush Settings. You can also open up this docker by pressing Ctrl F8. So here it is, my brush settings docker. By default, the default brush nib is always round and a little bit soft-edged. I need a more textured brush nib. So among the default presets in Corel Photo Paint, there is a more textured, blotchy brush nib. I think it is this one. Yeah, that's right. And to gently apply a color, I also need to dial up the transparency a bit more. Let's say 70% should do it. And I'm going to select white as my paint color. And with the Shift key pressed, I can interactively resize my brush nib size. So selecting the background, and now I'm going to apply some random blotches into my background. Let me resize the brush again to get it more random. And I think this is just fine. Now we can increase the opacity of the object layer a bit more. And as you can see, this adds some more texture to my map. Okay, I think this will do it, so I leave that as it is, but I'm combining my objects with the background, and I'm going to export this file as JPEG. And among the JPEG settings, yes, that's the right folder, into the BUM folder. Yeah, among the JPEG settings, I always use some custom adjustments. For example, I leave the quality at 100% to have the maximum amount of quality, and the subformat I always use 4:4:4. That's just because to prevent colors in my image bleeding together, and to have the highest possible compression, I set my progressive checkbox to checked. Okay, so far that was the first file, the most important one, the bump map, and I'm going to save my photo paint image as bump cpt in my raw files folder. So the next file I'm going to create is the color map file. As you might imagine, vegetation is not gray, it's green, and I just want to have some gray and brown color values for stone and rock textures, and some light blue or white values for snowy mountaintops. We need to create a color map. I'm using my bump map to derive the color map from, so I'm going to save this bump map file as color map file 2, just to work with it right away. Here it is. And what I have to do in my color map file is creating different layers for different colors and texture. I need a layer for vegetation, I need a layer for water, since I want some water, river flowing along this creek, and I need a layer for snow, I need a layer for whatever you can imagine. So let's start with the first layer, which will be the water layer. So I'm creating a new object layer. In Corel Photo Paint, all these layers are called objects, which makes sense. So don't confuse layers and objects with other applications. And I'm renaming this object to, let's say, water. And big surprise for this water, I'm not using blue, I'm going to use green. I'm gonna tell you why. Just let me select green color to fill the object with. So the reason why I use this green color is, you might know that from movies, it's called the blue screen effect. Is used when a person stands in front of a blue or green background. The green background is then filtered and replaced by an image of a landscape or another movie. And so what I have to do now is to clip this water to the lower areas of my map. Just to explain what a bump map is, I forgot that, sorry about that. A bump map is actually a grayscale image, and the different grayscale values in this image are used to elevate or to imprint points on a surface in a flat plane. In 3D applications, this is used to apply textures to flat areas, and the same here. For example, the dark and black areas are deeper in my landscape, and the lighter values represent some hills and mountains and heights in my landscape. So I need the water to be in this dark creek, so I have to clip this object, and I'm doing that by duplicating the background. And what I'm doing now is going to image and applying a threshold transformation. So I'm going to transform threshold, and here I can clip the light and dark values. I just have to play around a bit, as you can see, to get a satisfying result. And I think this is just close to what I want to achieve. That's it. Okay. And just to get more contrast in this image, I don't know if you can see these very dark gray spots in here. I need to make some custom adjustments, and for this purpose I'm going to adjust, select brightness, contrast, intensity. You can also use Control B on your keyboard, and I'm dialing up the contrast slider to the maximum. That will leave my texture image in black and white only, and this will be my clip mask for the water layer. But to use it as a clip mask, I have to invert it, just because the darker areas will be cut out from my image, and the lighter areas, the white areas, will be preserved. So I'm going to image, transform, invert, and there it is. Then I have to copy this this object to the clipboard by hitting Control C. Then I go to my water object again, and I'm going to create a clip mask for this object by right-clicking. Then I go to Create Clip Mask from Object Transparency. And this clip mask is actually totally white, just because I have the entire object filled with green. So there is no object transparency, and that's why my clip mask is left entirely white. But I will change that immediately. I just have to make sure that my clip mask is selected. I can see that by this little red border. And with the clip mask selected, I go to Edit, Paste, and paste as new selection. And as you can see, this restricts the green color to the previously inverted image and its white area. So when I'm going to set this object to invisible, you can see that just better. And this leaves my water just in the deeper creeks of my texture image. So what else do we need? Just let me rename that one for a better overview. This is the water clip mask, which I can leave at invisible. And what I need next is the snow object. So again, I'm going to duplicate my background. Let me set that in front of the other layers. Is it just working? Yes, it does. And again, the same here. I'm going to apply a threshold transformation but this time I don't want to have the deepest values. I want to extract to isolate the highest values. So switching the threshold to black, and again dragging around these little arrows here will leave the highest, the lightest areas in my bump map. Okay, I think this is just what I want to have. Let's try the auto adjust feature. Okay, that doesn't work properly, so again I'm going to brightness, contrast, intensity, and applying the maximum amount of contrast. This object I don't have to invert actually, just because the areas which I want to preserve are actually white and the rest is black, so this is just fine. I'm going to rename this object to snow clip. And of course I need an actual snow object, so I'm going to fill this object with light blue color. I'm going to edit, selecting a light blue. Ice blue just sounds fine, but isn't light enough, so I'm dragging my interactive color preview to a lighter value. Okay, then I'm going to fill my object with this blue color, and the same again here. I need to have a clip mask, so right click on this object, create clip mask from object transparency, and at first I have to copy my snow clip object to the clipboard, switching back to the clip mask, having it selected, going to edit, paste this new selection, and this will leave my snow object just as I want it, as I just want it to be. Let me rename this one to snow. What else do we need? We need some rock and stone. I'm going to create a fill covering the whole image, so I don't need to duplicate the background. I'm creating a new object. And selecting the fill properties, texture fill, and I think there was something among the styles which is very useful. There it is, rock, fractal, eroded. This is the one I use very often along with rock and stone textures, and I can leave the color settings and all this stuff as it is. It's a quite useful preset, and I'm filling my object, my whole object, with this texture. There it is. Just to see the result, I'm going to drag that down behind the other layers. There it is. And of course I need a layer for vegetation. Actually, the same procedure which I used here with my water and snow layer applies also to the vegetation layer, so I'm going to skip that in this video. Here we are back again. So here's my vegetation layer and the vegetation clip, and as you can see, this results in a more natural looking, realistic looking landscape. So before I go further in creating shadows and some distant haze, I'm gonna save that file. Save as color. That's right. Yeah, of course. Override this one. So what I'm doing now is we want to have it looking more natural. So in every landscape we have a sun or some light sources, and for this reason we need some shadows. So let me create a shadow object, and I'm pushing that one to the front, and now our texture map comes in handy again. The shadow map is relatively easy to create. I'm creating a new object, going to the fill options, and I'm using a uniform fill to fill my object with, but I just want to have a more orange light, something like this. Okay, I'm filling my entire object with this color. Then, while having the object selected, I'm going to Effects, Custom, Bump Map, and here I'm going to select my initial bump map file as bump map. You can do that by clicking on this arrow on the right. This will open up a thumbnail drop down, but if you click on more, you can select the source where your bump map is you want to use. So in this case, this would be the right file, and I'm always having stretch to fit selected, just because the bump map has the same size as my color map, so the bump map fits perfectly into my color map. Then I'm going to surface, and just let me dial up the scale factor to get the maximum amount of bump, and floor at 0, ceiling at 255, that's right. But I don't need highlight. I also do not need to have smooth bump map selected. This will result in a more smooth bump map, which is actually not what I want. So going to the lightning tab, and the lightning direction is actually good as it is. I just want to have it coming from the left side. The declination would be cool to have it somewhere here. Color is okay. The ambient light as well, I think. Okay. But to have a useful light map, I'm doing some auto adjustments on this layer. So I'm going to auto adjust. So I'm going to duplicate this object, since I don't want to be the shadow completely black. In nature there is no shadow which is entirely black. This is not natural. So I want to be the shadow to be more bluish. So let me invert this layer. Invert. And now I'm going to replace the dark values, or the lighter values, since I have inverted this one, the light values with a different color. let's say a dark blue. Okay, this one is just fine. Now I set this object layer to add mode, and now I'm able to adjust the opacity. And I think 60% is just okay. Now I can combine these two objects together, and setting the merge mode of the new object to, let's say, soft light, and yes. This is exactly the result I want to have. Since I want to be the water affected by the shadows, I'm going to pull the water layer just in front of the other layers. But we're not yet finished. We need some distant haze or distant blend effect just to simulate a large depth in the z-axis of our landscape. So here I'm going to create a new object again. Just let me set that in front of the other ones, and I'm going to fill this this object with a light blue color, light blue, atmospheric blue color. And this effect is actually an atmospheric effect. And I want to have this blue color more opaque in the background and more transparent in the foreground. So I'm going to the object transparency tool, and I'm just dragging my transparency the whole way down to the bottom with the control key selected, so that my transparency gradient becomes absolutely vertical. But I think we have to decrease the opacity in this case. Let's set that to 25%, and I think that's fine. So now our color map is completely finished. So I'm gonna save my Corel Photo Paint image as color CPT. And of course I'm going to export my color image into the color folder as JPEG. Yes, that's okay. I don't need masks. Okay, that's just fine. So the next file we're working with, or we will create, is the displays file. So to distort our color map in perspective and correctly, we need a displacement map. And just before we create our displays map, we have to do some modifications on our bump map file. And for this purpose, I'm going to copy the water clip, since I want the water not to be affected by the displacement actually, just because it's a flat area. I'm going to copy that to my clipboard, and I'm going to reopen the bump map file. and here I'm going to paste in my object. I'm just going to clip my water object, and with this object already in my clipboard, I'm going to create a clip mask from object transparency and paste in the same object. Okay. Now I have to make sure that my water layer is blending seamlessly into my bump map background. So I'm going to adjust brightness, contrast, intensity, and then I'm adjusting the slider for the brightness. Just to get rid of those edges and to make it seamlessly fitting into the background. And I think this is just fine. So these are all modifications I have to do on my bump map file. So I'm gonna combine the object with a background. And now I'm going to duplicate the background twice. Selecting the background again, and I will apply a uniform fill with a dark middle gray. I think something around 153 will be fine, 40% black. Okay, selecting the fill tool and fill the entire background with a gray color. Now, what I'm going to do with these two objects, I need to invert the topmost object to turn the darkest areas to the lightest areas and the lightest areas to the darkest. So I'm going to invert this one. I'm just going to explain what a displace map actually does. A displace map contains several colors, and according to these colors, the pixels in an image where you apply a displace map to are displaced in a specific direction. For example, the color cyan in a displace map will displace the pixels in your image into the upper right direction, and the color magenta will displace the pixels into the lower left direction. So this is quite useful to distort your image and to get really interesting effects. In this case, the deepest areas need to be colored in magenta because I want to have them displaced downwards, and when I use only the vertical slider with the horizontal slider left at 0, I can displace the pixels to the bottom, and with cyan I can displace the pixels to the top. So this object needs to be colored magenta, so I'm going to Effects, Camera, no, here is Camera, Photo Filter, and I can replace the lighter values with a color of my choice. So in this case it should be magenta. Here we are. And we have to set this layer to soft light, merge mode. The same with the under with an object underneath, and the same procedure here, but this time I need to replace the lighter values with cyan. So now I have smooth fading from deeper to higher areas and from magenta to cyan. I'm going to export this file as displays, but since it's for the vertical distortion only, I append a V. But what I need is an additional displays map for the horizontal distortion. As you can imagine, in perspective, the objects which are further away from the viewer are seem to be smaller than the objects in the foreground. And to simulate this, I have to create an additional displays map. So I'll set those two objects to invisible. And to simulate a perspective distortion, the further objects are at the top of my color map, and the objects which are nearer to the viewer are more at the bottom of my color map. So I need to have a linear fountain fill from cyan to magenta. If you take a look at the displays map sample again, cyan and the cyan color will displace the pixels into the right direction if I only use the horizontal slider, and the magenta color will displace the pixels into the left direction and if I only use the horizontal slider. So let's switch back to our file. From paint to paper means from magenta to cyan. Okay. A linear fountain fill, and oh, it should be the other way around. So I have to replace magenta with cyan and the background color with magenta, just like this. And let's fade this object into the background, holding the control key and dragging a transparency, and an interactive transparency will give us our desired result, like this. But to make use of this this horizontal displays map, we need to distort it. I'm just going to show you how a displays map is used. First, I have to make this object 100% opaque. I'm going to Effects, Distort, Displace, and this is what I'll actually do to my color map later. I'm dragging the vertical slider to 15. So I'm selecting the displays map for the vertical value, leaving the scale mode at stretch to fit, and I leave the horizontal slider at 0 to apply the displacement only to the vertical axis. And the reason why I use a value of 15 is just because when I use higher values, it will distort my image just too much. So I prefer to apply the same effect with low value several times. Let's say 5 times. And I'm going to save this one or export this one as displace H for horizontal. Now I have to apply these displacement maps in the right order. So I'm gonna open the color map. And I'm creating a new object from background. And at first I'm going to save this one as my final file as Corel Photo Paint image under the raw files, and this will be my final file. Now I'm going to apply the vertical displacement, so I'm going to Effects, Distort, Displace, and having the vertical displacement map selected with the same value and the same options, I'm going to apply this effect 5 times, the same as for my horizontal displace map. I actually forgot to count how much I applied this one to my color map. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. As you can see, this already distorts my entire image, and it just looks scary, but you'll soon see what I mean. Now I'm going to apply the horizontal distortion. Again, going to Displace, but this time I need my horizontal displace map, which is this one. And now I have to change these settings. I don't want to have the vertical axis of my image affected, rather the horizontal one. And as you can see, this distorts my image according to the right perspective. And applying this one several times too. You can see that the result gets more and more realistic. The last thing which is left to do is I need to squeeze down the height of my image. As you can see, the more I squeeze it down, the more it gets more realistic. And somewhere down here you can see that it looks quite cool, like a realistic landscape. We can crop that image. And all we have to do right now is we have to create a sky, sample out the green color, and add the sky to the replace the green color with our sky map, and we're done. So I hope you enjoyed this video and you've learned some methods to create your own textures and how to work with displace maps. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. Bye bye.